Hi, good morning. I'm Frances Wan, and I come to you from Leeward Community College. And at Leeward, I teach the whole gamut of English, from English 24, which means not quite ready for English 100, all the way to the writing intensive English 200 level courses. But my goal for all of my students, whether it be a student from English 24 or a writing intensive student at the 200 level, is to get them to think critically. Today I'm going to focus more on first-year college students. So critical thinking, that's kind of scary, especially for a first-year college student. When you throw in a really esoteric topic like, hey guys, read an article about predatory lending, and then think critically about whether or not the United States federal government should increase regulations to substantially decrease income inequality. You're gonna lose them. So my remedy for alleviating the fear of critical thinking is to select a theme that is universal to your student demographic. So it's human nature for people to fear the unknown and the unfamiliar. So if you pick a topic like Disney, how many of you guys don't know what Disney is? Okay, well, if you pick a topic that students are familiar with, they become a little bit more comfortable in an academic environment because it's familiar. And then you must trust that everyone in your class has something to contribute, especially if you have a topic like Disney, whether it be because they've been to Disneyland like 20 times, or they grew up watching Disney movies, or they just love Mickey Mouse. And then from there, you build from what is already known. You build on their prior knowledge. So once you introduce the theme, Disney, you get them to think critically, and you do that by adding a twist. You do this by throwing out a far-out theory or presenting a controversy. You're basically challenging their prior knowledge. So what I have my students do is read an article by the scholar Henry Thoreau. Have any of you guys heard of him? He's the author of Children's Culture and Disney animated films. And basically, he criticizes Disney. He says, and I quote, "The construction of gender identity for girls and women represent the most controversial issues in Disney animated films." So basically, he's calling Disney sexist. And the students are shocked because what they're familiar with is, Disneyland being the happiest place on the planet, or Disney movies telling them good morals and having heartfelt endings. So one of the clips that I show them is the scene from The Lion King. It's when the hyenas that are starving after Scar takes over approach Scar, and Shenzi, the leader of the pack, who is voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, says, "Scar, we've got a bone to pick with you. We're hungry." And Scar's like, "It's not my problem. It's the lioness's job to do the hunting." So what I ask them is, according to Henry Thoreau, do you think The Lion King is racist and sexist? So what I'm going to have you guys do now, so this is going to emulate what goes on in my classroom, is at your table, so if you're a learner, forcing my students to collaborate. I want you to think of how this scene of the hyenas asking Scar where the food is, and Scar telling them that it's the lioness's job to go hunting, is racist or sexist. And if you don't see it,
so we're gonna have to discuss.
Yeah, right now, and then I'm gonna have you guys share. Okay, so this is the point where I tell my students to come together and share what was discussed in your group. So does anyone want to volunteer to go first to either challenge what Henry Thoreau has to say by accusing the Lion King of being racist and sexist, or support what he has to say? Go ahead.
I think we challenge the sexism because in nature, in a pride, lionesses do the hunting. So it's not a I don't know. We really feel like it's an overly sexist remark. Scar's comment itself may have been pushing a little sexism, and he's not the ideal role model. But then in racism, we know that the hyenas, there's an African American woman playing one of the hyenas, a Hispanic male playing another one of the hyenas. But then there's also an African American male playing the fox. So I don't see the interplay, unless you want to say Ferris Bueller is the hero, and he's of course the white kid. And so that's maybe the way we can see the racism is coming into play.
Yes.
The hyena did speak with if I remember, not Whoopi Goldberg, but Cheech Marin, is that it?
Cheech, yeah.
Marin. He did speak with a relatively obvious Hispanic accent, which I thought was, he didn't need to. He could have spoken however they wanted him to speak. So I think that was kind of, in my opinion, a choice by the director to bring something that in many people's households is kind of necessary. Already.
Good. Anybody else?
I think if you apply it to humans, you don't think about nature, then yes, we would say it's very sexist and things like that. But if you know nature and history, but do kids know nature and the lion and pride?
But Disney does, because they made nature documentaries for many, many years. So Disney has a legitimate reason to say the lioness is the one that does it.
And I agree with you, but the kids don't really know all that.
If he wanted to absolve himself of any responsibility, who else was it? There was no other male figures in the pack, period. So he could have said instead, it's the other lion's job. But if he would have said it's the lioness's job, it's collectively the same group. Right? There's no other else. There's no other male figure in this pack, right?
This one scene I think is a little bit hard to parse out the racism and sexism in Disney films. But if we zoom out a little and look at Disney films in general, I think almost all of them are blatantly racist and sexist. In that supporting characters are often played by ethnic minorities. The first movie they take place in Africa, all of the characters are animals. Right. And when they finally have an African princess, she spends almost the entire movie as an animal, as a frog. Right. And the protagonist is almost always white characters. So if you look at kind of the overall arc of Disney and the roles that they have for men and women, women always achieve success by getting married happily ever after. And they're recognizing this in opinions, like Brave and a few other films more recently that challenge this. But if you look at the arc of Disney films in general, I think it's pretty obvious that they're both racist.
So let me ask you this. Do you think Disney is merely reflecting the ideals of society at the time? Or do you think Disney is teaching society the ideals? Because like you were saying, movies like Brave and Tangled, they're progressively becoming more liberating for women, and that's kind of reflecting the change in time. So which one do you think it is? Disney teaching children negative ideals, or they're just reflecting?
So the question you're asking is, does Disney have an agenda
Yes.
in that way?
The media is more racist and sexist than the population in general. So the idea that they sell the idea that they're reflecting what people think, but if you look at the actual numbers and biases who produces the media versus men versus female producers and owners of TV stations, race produces media, any of those numbers you look at, it's a pretty small percentage of our population that produces what everybody else watches. And although these tendencies exist in society, the media produces them more than it reflects them.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Well, going back to your question, I think related to the one that was Scar there, where it says it's the lioness's job to do the hunting. One of the things I commented to my group is that over 75% of women identify themselves as being the primary purchasers in their homes, regardless of whether they're married or not. And so going back to this idea of whether they're reflecting reality or whether they're trying to make a statement, the reality is, whether by design or simply by choice or whatever, in my home, my wife makes most of the purchasing decisions. I don't define that as her job, So that's how we've allocated our roles, and that's, at least according to the U.S. surveys, that's the case for the majority of families in the U.S.
What about, let's go back to the voices of the hyenas. You guys brought up that Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin voice the hyenas. Whoopi Goldberg, what's her profession? Comedian. So, I don't know. And they also.
So is Cheech Marin.
Exactly. And Eddie Murphy, who also voiced another side character, Mushu, in Mulan. And they're supposed to provide some comic relief for some of the serious topic matter that's going on in these Disney movies. So, do you think perhaps Henry Thoreau was looking too deeply into this racism theory? Because after all, the voice actors are comedians, and their role in the movie is supposed to be funny.
Well, it's, if you have three different comedians from different ethnicities, there are groups of jokes that they can and cannot tell, right? And so, if you're going to find the best comedian, oftentimes it's the one that's kind of on the edge there in terms of pushing the boundary of what you're wanting to hear, that sort of thing. And that's what makes people laugh. So it wouldn't be, in my mind, hard to make an argument that someone who can make more charged jokes might be funny. So that might be just the resulting identifying the best. Because at this point, Whoopi Goldberg's career was pretty high, right? She was very popular. And Eddie Murphy, he's not really a good example. He had runs with different movies and stuff. But she was pretty popular for that choice.
But both of those comedians really pushed the envelope in their careers. Both of them, lots of swearing, lots of discussion of marijuana. None of that was in this movie. So they were already censored, in their parts as the hyenas from what they're naturally do to get a laugh. So, it was that too.
Oh, go ahead.
I think too, we have to look at the fact that Disney wants to sell tickets to their movies. I don't think Disney's really engaged in social criticism. They just want to make a profit and get people. So when we look at the motivations of the media, I think sometimes the media is reluctant to challenge. You don't get a movie like Frozen out of the 50s and 60s, right? Because it would be too challenging a movie, and that wasn't what they wanted to do. But now, Brave and Frozen, some of these movies reflect, but I think it's more out of a desire to be all-inclusive or to reach the most people. Of course, that argument fails when you see an R-rated movie, which is by nature going to make half as much money as the same movie if they took out a couple things. But where there is a profit motive, I think that's going to control it.
I agree, definitely. What about the coloring of the hyenas in Scar?
What about the what?
The coloring of the hyenas in Scar. They're darker than the protagonists and the good characters.
They're evil.
Our hyenas that color, I don't even know the color of hyenas.
They're actually the color of the lions.
Oh, they are.
Spotted.
But why is Scar dark? So is that kind of insinuating that, darker color races are sinister?
Or the darker rooms are scarier than lighter rooms.
So, yeah, exactly. So we're trying to think about who our audience is. And our main audience in Disney, is trying to make a profit. They mainly target children. So children are able to identify with the dark being scarier and the light being not so scary. Safe, right. So in a child's mind, they can figure out that Scar is a bad guy because he's a darker color. And it has nothing to do with race. So that's something we would often debate about. But thank you for your contributions. So what we just did was we had group discourse, and this is very similar to what I have my students do. So we explored multiple perspectives because you all had different ideas, whether it's supporting what Henry Thoreau has to say, or challenging what he has to say, or challenging your own personal beliefs, and then we generated ideas, and we cultivated internal dialogue. Because what I have them do is write an essay about this topic. Is Disney teaching children negative ideals, whether it's sexism, racism, etc.? And by vocalizing your ideas and listening to different perspectives, it gives you something to go home with. It gives my students something to work with when they open up their laptops, so they're not just staring at a blank screen. So that process really helps them develop their thoughts once they got the foundation through class discussion. So do you have any questions so far? No? Okay. So next activity, we're going to brainstorm themes. So the two that I have are social media and the fast food industry. And I'm currently using social media to teach my Dev Ed English courses to get them to critically think. So again, in your groups, come up with a theme that you think is universal to your student demographic, whether it's the type of course that they're taking or the type of population that you're generally working with. And then we'll share some ideas. Let's have each group share their theme and then maybe explain why they think it'd be an appropriate topic for getting your students to think critically. Let's start with this group.
Well, we talked about teaching soft skills and coaching, and we talked about possible branding at River Community College, where we teach IT with local things that local people are passionate about, like surfing, or spam, or something culturally significant to them. And I was talking about, there was a book recently written about surfing etiquette, and how there's a lot of fights that break out over who got the wave first. And so we might use that as an example of how to manage your anger, or to introduce tools that they can use in anger management. But connect it to something that is significant and to them in their lives.
Good. I like that cultural appeal.
Yeah.
Good.
I was thinking professional athletics. And I teach in business, teach accounting. It'd be interesting to approach professional athletics from a number of different perspectives. The whole realm of the business school, the marketing, the human resources, just everything, and just really evaluate from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, that's a really broad topic, which is good. So you have a lot of subtopics that can come from it. So you can make it a theme that would last the entire semester. So that's good.
We had a few different themes. We talked about social media, of course, we had that as an example. Education, sports. And some of my colleagues here, they talked about, in particular with social media, and kind of dug into the dark net, this notion of ways that social media can be used for good or for ill, and security and privacy and all those considerations associated with it.
Oh, okay. You're good. Okay.
I came in late, so
Oh,
she was
oh.
catching me up on what we did before.
Oh, okay. Three gentlemen in the back.
We talked a little bit about the culture shock that some of our Iowa students encounter when they come to campus, and then just kind of how students will try to fit their picture of the world on the condition they find themselves in, whether they're adaptable or whether they're going to tune something out.
Good. Next.
We talked
teach a common subject?
No. Okay. Education, anthropology, and computing.
Oh, okay.
Super common. What are you talking about?
Talking about advertising, talking about commercials. People see a lot of commercials, so teaching or analyzing advertisements.
That's a really good one, advertising. Cell phones. Are cell phones making us smarter? Maybe. Okay.
Well, for me, in academic coaching and the geographic areas, or the students that come from these particular geographic areas, whether it be low income or lots of local kids, first generation students, what have you. But really bringing it based with cultural, just like how Kathy is using some. But most of them is, there's like a generation gap, and cultural part of it, the component is lost. And so what I try to do is try to implement that from the beginning so that they can have a sense of who they are. And from there, begin to build the foundation and then help them to move forward.
Yeah, the cultural topics are usually very popular, especially at institutions that work with a large population of Hawaiian students. And also the working poor, that just reminded me when you're saying low income, they love that topic. So that's another good one. So yeah, thank you for sharing your ideas. So do I have any questions? And if you want a copy of that Henry Garreau essay, you can email me and I can send you a document. I didn't want to print a bunch out because I'm all about saving trees. But thank you. Thank you for coming to my presentation.